Hi, I'm Joel Oppenheimer, and we are in the East Wing of our Chicago gallery. Today, I'm going to talk about 6 works of art from our collection. We're going to view 2 celestial charts by a German astronomer by the name of Johannis Bode, 2 Audubon prints, and 2 prints by a well-known 19th century ornithologist by the name of Daniel Giraud Elliot. We're going to begin by looking at 2 celestial charts by Johannis Bode. Bode was a German astronomer who became the director of the Berlin Observatory in 1786. While there, in 1801, he produced his most magnificent work, the Uranographia, which depicted in 18 plates the entire sky as it was known then. We have 2 wonderful examples. On my right is Sagittarius and Scorpius. And on my left, we have Centaurus and Hydra. Now, we refer to the titles of these pieces by the best known constellations, which were named by Ptolemy centuries earlier, and those that most people are most commonly familiar with. However, Bode added a tremendous amount of knowledge of the sky in his work, and that is what it is so well known for. Previous to Bode's work, there had been 5,000 stars charted, and those were stars that were visible with the naked eye. Over the centuries before Bode, there were many, many stars that had been discovered, especially with the invention of the telescope. And his charts added 12,000 additional stars for a total of over 17,000 stars that comprised his work. The interesting and charming aspect of his work is that he felt compelled to invent new constellations to depict these stars. And if you look closely, you will see that these constellations were most often represented by modern technical inventions. Here we have the telescope illustrated and sextants. He also, in others, showed the printing press and other inventions of the time. And the electric generator had been invented, and he depicted that as a constellation. Interestingly, none of those constellations have been recognized and continue to be used today in referring to the stars. An important distinction to be made is that technically, celestial charts, maps of the sky, are not natural history art. There are 2 distinct differences. These are not pictures of specimens that were physically procured, and they are also not depicting living things that are found on the earth. However, in every other way, they share in common the aspects of natural history art, antique natural history art, that we feature in our gallery. They're magnificent, original engravings created by an artist, and also are representing the most modern aspect of its time in terms of the technical facility of the prints, as well as the new discoveries of the period. Bode's work, as with Audubon's, is created on a double elephant folio sheet. These are the largest sky charts that were ever created. And the 18 engravings, when assembled in a large square, comprise the view of the entire sky as it was known at the time, similar to what you would experience by looking at the ceiling in a planetarium today. Here we have two examples of works by John James Audubon. The interesting thing that we're going to examine today is that these prints are both of the same image, but from two different editions of Audubon's work, the only two editions that were published in the double elephant folio size in the 19th century that are considered to be original Audubon prints. On my left, we have the Havell edition of the Virginian Partridge, and on my right, we have the Bien edition of the same image. Now, Audubon cleverly featured most prominently the red-shouldered hawk in this print, but the title refers to the Virginian Partridge, which is commonly known today as the bob-white quail. And it's a great opportunity to see the similarities as well as the differences between these two editions. The Havell engraving is a hand-colored etching. It was produced in the 1820s and 30s. And it's a very, very crisp technique, wonderfully illustrated in this image, with, in this case, a blank background that represents the sky. And the prominence of the subject against it is very dynamic. In the Bien edition, which happened in the late 1850s and early 1860s, is incorporating a new technique of the time called chromolithography. And these images were produced by an artist on stone as opposed to the etching and engraving that was produced in a copper plate. The Bien edition is the rarest of Audubon editions because the project was never completed by his son. And there are many variations that one will find of Bien edition prints, and it's the most misunderstood of all of Audubon's editions. Now, I spent 7 years of my life researching this edition and was fortunate to publish a book that examines many of these previously unknown aspects of this rare edition of Audubon's work. In this case, not only do we have an example of the rarest edition, but this particular version of the Virginian Partridge in the Bien edition is especially rare. In fact, it has characteristics that are rarely seen, and one in particular that I've never seen in another Bien edition Virginian Partridge. On the top right, where you usually have the plate number, the word plate shows, but there is no number, indicating it may have been an early proof before they began to produce the multiple images of the same plate. Most notably is a fantastic rendering of the sky in the background. And again, this coloration and the representation of the clouds is something that is just barely represented in other versions of this particular print. The Bien edition is a chromolithograph, meaning it's mostly printed color. However, it's finished by hand, so there are also hand-colored elements in the print as well. This is also an excellent opportunity to see what is different between these two editions on an aesthetic basis and a technical basis. And these are both great examples of what makes each print the best of what it is. Some people try to say that one edition is superior to the other. The Havell edition is certainly the most collectible of Audubon prints, and the market reflects that as well. The Bien edition is a chromolithograph, and this new technique had great promise at the time, and Audubon's sons, who were producing it shortly after his death, felt that the softer, more nuanced quality of the chromolithograph would better capture the actual qualities of Audubon's original paintings, watercolors, that were then translated into each print. The Havell edition is very attractive because of the etching and engraving and hand coloring elements. And this particular print is outstanding in that respect. The engraving is very, very sharp and crisp, and the hand coloring is rich and full and nuanced. The Bien edition is printed on double elephant folio rag paper, as was the Havell edition. However, the Bien edition prints are not on a watermarked paper. That remains the sole characteristic of the Havell edition. And we're going to have the opportunity now to view the watermark in this particular print. In this case, it's in the bottom right quadrant of the paper, and we're going to use a flashlight to take a look at the watermark. And it says J. Watman, Turkey Mill, and the date is 1829. Now, a couple of interesting aspects about this watermark is that it is Turkey Mill paper. Now, there were two different Watman papers that were used in the production of Audubon's work, J. Watman paper and Watman Turkey Mill paper, both Watman papers, but they were produced at two separate mills that were actually quite close to each other in England. The Turkey Mill paper has slightly different aging properties than the Watman paper, and it tends to mellow and get a little bit deeper and yellower with age. However, these papers were originally identical in tone and color. Also of interest is the date of the watermark. In this case, the watermark is 1829, and the engraved date on the plate is 1830, which is a good thing, because the Audubon prints were produced over a 12-year span and essentially printed to a certain extent on demand. In the beginning of the project, Audubon didn't know how successful he was going to be and how many prints he would sell and have to produce. So there could have been a subscriber, say in 1836, that would have bought an Audubon folio, and they would have printed the 1830 engraving on an 1836 paper, indicating that the engraving was made, the print rather, was made later on in the project. In this case, this print, and this accounts for some of the rich quality of the engraving, was an early state of the print, as is evidenced by the fact that the date in the paper is a year earlier than the plate itself was engraved. Next, we're going to view two works by Daniel Giraud Elliot. Elliot was a prominent zoologist in the latter part of the 19th century. He was the founder of the American Ornithologists Union and also one of the founders of the American Museum of Natural History. He later was a curator of ornithology at the Field Museum here in Chicago. Elliot was also an independently wealthy individual, and as he began to produce his folios, he spared no expense. Consequently, the result was some of the finest and last hand-colored lithographs produced from the era of great natural history art. Here we have an example from his monograph on the birds of paradise. This is the black manuscript, and this bird is particularly noted among the birds of paradise because it's a monogamous bird. The birds of paradise are found in Papua New Guinea and parts of Australia, and they're beautifully, exotically colored examples, and this particular print is no exception. The color is absolutely brilliant as you go from the violets and lavenders and purples into the greens. And he used, the paintings and lithographs were executed by Joseph Wolff. Wolff created some of Gould's earlier work, but he was in great demand and also reluctant to work for many of the publishers of natural history works. But Elliot, because of his prominence and perhaps because of his ability to pay, employed Wolff as the exclusive artist in most of his work. They're also among the largest ornithological works created, other than, of course, Audubon's double elephant folio. These are, in fact, elephant folio size sheets, which is half the double elephant folio paper. Over here, we have another work from his monograph on the family of cats. And in this work, which was produced later in the late 1870s and early 1880s, Elliot depicted all of the species of cats throughout the world. In this case, we have the puma, which is a cat that's found in the Americas, and in North America, we know it as the mountain lion. Again, the print was drawn by Joseph Wolff on stone, and it is a remarkable, beautiful example of hand-colored lithography, also executed on the elephant folio paper. Thank you for joining us today and viewing a part of our collection from our gallery. If you enjoyed the presentation, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, press the like button, and we hope you join us in the future for our next episode exploring works of antique, original natural history art.